Jakob Dylan. My favorite story with Jake, and he's such a legendary dude, super smart, great musician, great songwriter. We all know that. But what I remember, so Jake and I both at the time, we were on Virgin Records together. Wallflowers were on Virgin Records. And then when I went over to Interscope, they were on Interscope at the same time too. So, musically, I felt like we were always on the same labels. But the story about Jake that I have has to do with our kids. And it's just funny because when I tell the story, it's just strange to think of Jakob Dylan calling me and going, "Hey man, you skateboard, right?" And I go, "Yeah." And at this point I'm probably like late 30s, early 40s. And we had our kids, and his son is older than my kids a little bit. His son, Levi. And Jacob was like, "Hey man, my son wants to skateboard. You skateboard still, I don't. So when I go to the skateboard park with him, I can't get out there and like hop on a board with him. Would you mind if I brought him over? You guys skate together and kind of teach him the basics." And I was like, "Dude, absolutely." So he comes over, we go to the skateboard park, and it's in Glendale, the skateboard park. And what they have at the skateboard park is they have the fence that goes around it. And then everyone that's not skating sits on the outside of the fence. So you have all the parents in these bleachers, as you've seen whenever you go to a park like that. But in my case, I skate, so I'm in there with my bros. We're all skating together. They show up. "Levi, what's up?" And what I do remember is like Levi actually knew how to skate. So I was like, all right, whatever. I'm kind of following him around, showing him some of the runs. We're talking, we're doing this. And meanwhile, Jacob's just sitting out there. He has a hat on and he's sitting with all the other parents. And, it's all other parents. It's, the moms, it's the dads, and they're all watching the kids skate. And at a certain point, I kind of realized Levi's doing fine. He's on his own. So I come back out there and sit down with Jakob and the rest of the parents. Now, no one there knows in the bleachers that it's Jakob Dylan Wallflowers, and let's say it, Jakob Dylan, Bob Dylan's son. Like no one knows they're sitting next to a Dylan. They don't know. Which is cool about Jake because he's just mellow that way. He's not like, "Hey, check me out." So he's just sitting there and he's talking to this other dad. They're in a deep conversation. And what they're talking about is this father that he was talking to, how his son was into all these things that his dad's not into. And he was saying to Jake, like, "Yeah, like, your son's a skateboarder." And he's like, "Yeah." And Jake's like, "Yeah, that really wasn't my thing." And they're talking. I'm just sitting there taking it all in. And then the dad says to him, "My son plays guitar." And he goes, Jacob goes, "Wow, that's cool." He goes, "And he's good. He writes songs. He sings. I'm really impressed, And I'm looking at Jacob like, "Ah, that's cool." And then the father says to Jakob Dylan, he goes, "This talent that my son has, it's incredible." And we're all, "Yeah." And then he says this to Jacob. He says, "You know what they say, though, about that kind of talent? It skips a generation." And without missing a beat, like a millisecond, Jake looks at the dad and then he looks at me and goes, "Now I find out."